Hello, welcome to Introduction to Java Programming. In this session, we will discuss about the new features in interfaces. So few new features have been added to interfaces from Java 9 onward. Let's understand them. So what are the new features in interfaces? So till 1.8, we don't have the following, which I have listed over here. But from 1.9, so which also can be called as Java 9, so we have all these features. What are they specifically? Or otherwise, so before Java 9, so we used to say interface is something which has interface, let's say X, and which has only abstract methods and constants. That's it, right? But from Java 9, an interface can have default methods, a method with a default keyword. Okay, an interface can have static methods. An interface can have private method, and also an interface can have the static private methods. So four new additions. Can have default methods. So that means an interface can come up with certain default behavior. You have static methods. So you can actually have a method which is static, and that can be called directly with the interface name. You don't require an object. You don't require an implementation class object. A static method can be called with the class name, right? In the same fashion, if you have a static method, that can be called with interface name. And interface also have private and static private methods. So private methods are not accessible outside, but interface defines certain private methods. Okay, so which can be called through some of the methods of the interface there itself. Okay, so let's understand these things. So these are the new features. In order to make you understand all these things, I have written a single program where I define all these things, and I will actually implement them also, and I will create object. Okay, so let's now see interface XYZ. So I'm keeping a name for this interface as XYZ with Java 9 features. And of course, interface can contain abstract methods. This is actually the original interface, right? Okay, so this abstract method, and it's what actually what's about interface in general. So it is still there. And other than that, we have default methods. So default and some method name, right? So this is a default method. It's not abstract method. So all the four methods which I told, they are not abstract. So they can have their behaviors, their implementations. So now I have a default method for the keyword default void message, and I have certain behavior. So it says it's a default method. So interface contains all public members, even though here I am not saying public, right? Here public, here public. I am not saying public. So, and my default method is going to be public, my static method is going to be public. Unless I specify private, all other members are going to be public. Okay, so this is how I write a default method, and I can have certain default behavior with this. Now I can have a static method as well. So static void fun. So this is by default public static void fun, and the implementation is it's a static method. Okay, so in the same fashion, I can have a private method also. So private void private method, and I'm saying it's a private method. That's fine. And then I have a private static method also. So private static private method, and it says it's a static private method. So these are the four new additions, 1, 2, 3, 4 from Java 9. And however, we have abstract methods from the beginning. Now so before actually I go and implement, see, this is a default method. In order to call this method, what I require an object, right? So that means somebody has to implement this class, and then with the object of that class I can call this. And in order to call the static method, I don't require object, because static methods can be called directly with the class name. So here a static method is defined in interface, so I can call directly xyz.fun. That's fine. So then coming to the private, how do you call this private method? Okay, from the implementation class, you cannot call it actually. Private means within the class only. Private means within the class or interface only. From other class you cannot access it. Now this interface has to be implemented by somebody, right? And somebody has to call this private method. It's not possible. Private methods cannot be accessible from outside of a class. Now what we can do is you can write the private methods, but this private method calls you cannot do from outside. That's why any private method has to be called from other method actually. So like, for example, this default method can access my private method because within the class. So now I write my private method over there. Okay, so called within the class. So you cannot call this private method from outside of a class. Okay, that problem is solved. And then coming to the private static. So it's a static method. Again, it is private method. So you cannot call a private method outside of a class. Even though it is static, a static method can be called with the interface name, right? But you have to call from outside. Fine. So it cannot be called because it is private. So what we can do, a private static method, we will actually call, we'll actually make use of this private static method in the static method. So now I write here static private method. But because it's a static method, another static method can call it, right? So called within the class or interface, right? So I'm actually in the interface, called within the interface. Okay, so it can be called, this fun method can be called directly with the interface name. So that is xyz dot fun, and then the static method is also get called. So this is how we can actually make use of these 4 new methods. A default method which requires an object, and static method not no object is required because it's a static, and private method you have to call in default method, otherwise you don't have an option because you can't call in static. Only method where you can call is this default method. And private static you can actually call, this is a static method you can call in the other static method. This is fine. Otherwise this can be called in any other non-static method also. But any static we usually call with the static, so that static go well. Fine. So now this is the interface with the new features. Now let's come to my implementation class. So in the same file, I am writing my implementation class also. So I have named this as abc.java. So that is going to be my main class. Okay, so this abc class, what it will do, implements XYZ. When it implements XYZ, all these methods are behaves. Right? So only method I need to provide implementation is apps method, that is the abstract method. So immediately what we do, we provide the implementation that required abstract method and methods are implemented in ABC. So that is the primary responsibility, because ABC implements XYZ, all abstract methods must be implemented and we are doing it. And I'm making this public because in an interface, everything is public unless it's private, right? And then I have my main method. Now let's see actually. So now with the main method, what all in the main method, what all I have, can I call my private method? Can I call my private method directly? No. Right? So can I call my fun method which is static? Yes. So now what I'm doing here is, initially I'm not creating any object, I'm just saying xyz.fun. What is xyz? xyz is the interface name and fun is static. Okay, static method can be called with the class name or interface name, right? So I can call directly that. So I don't require an object. So xyz.fun. So fun method, in fact, calling the static private method also. So this is another static method, which is a private method. You cannot call from outside. So I'm calling it in that. Let's see actually whether this will work or not. So I am not creating any object here. I'm just calling fun method. So when fun method is called, I want fun behavior at the same time static private method behavior also. So I need to find two output statements over here. So let me actually do that. Okay, so initially let me show you how it is actually going to get compiled, and let me show you also the bytecodes. Java C abc.java. Yeah, so now Java C abc.java, when you compile, you will get two .class files. One is abc.class and xyz.class. Now, firstly, let me show you xyz dot class file. Now you can see it is compiled from abc.java interface xyz. It has apps method, and which has a default method. It has a static method. Even though two private methods are there, it's not showing because private methods are will not be accessed from outside. So it's not showing you the private methods. Even though it has private method, it's not showing you. Right now, let me actually show you ABC, Java P ABC. So Java P ABC has one method, that is apps method implemented, and one constructor by default constructor will be supplied, and of course we have the main method also. Right, so everything is fine. I have the dot class files. So when I run ABC, what is going to happen in the ABC, and I have fun method called directly with the interface name. So now that fun method has a call to static private method also. Yeah, now it's working, right? Now you can see when I go to fun method, it's showing it's a static method. It is showing me it's a static method, and there is a method call. So private method is called inside the method. So I can see it's a static private method. It's working, right? So now I don't require any object. Okay, but in order to call apps method, this apps method, and this message method, I require object. So let me create object ABC, some small ABC equal to new ABC. Okay, and with ABC I can call this message method. This message method is my default method. So this is my default method. So the interface is coming up with some default behavior. See, message method. Okay, so this when I call this message method, and there is a method called to private method also, because I cannot call private method directly from outside of the interface. No, I cannot call it. So what I'm doing, I'm calling the message method, the default method, and there is a call actually to private method as well. So now I'm going to see so two more things output, and of course I need to call this apps method as well. So abc dot apps method, that is abstract method. Yeah, so this has been implemented in my implementation class. So that's it. Let's see how it's going to work. Java C abc.java. Now I have an object also. I'm calling the default method, and I'm calling the implemented method also, that is apps method. But when I call default method, it is calling my private method as well. Now let's see. Yeah, so these are all two static methods. When I call default method, it's saying default method, and default method has a call to private method, and it says it's a private method. And finally, apps method, the method of XYZ implemented in ABC. Right? So this is how you have to use these new methods which are introduced in Java 9. So now, for example, if you try to call ABC dot fun method, this fun is my private method, right? One is my private method C here. Sorry, not the static method, but my private method PVT method. So if I start calling this PVT method, okay, if I call the PVT method, what happens here? This should be a compiler error because PVT method is a private method. You cannot actually access it from outside, right? Let me show you this. Java C abc.java, and when I compile, now you are going to get a compile term error. Yeah, so private method cannot be called from outside. So that's why what the technique we are using, we are actually calling this method, private method, in default method, because default method can be called, and that's not a private, right? So this is how we are going to work and understand all Java 9 features. So from Java 9, we have four new things added to interfaces. You have default methods where you can write some default behavior of the interface. You can have static methods which can be called by interfaces directly, and private methods and private static methods. So which you cannot call out from outside. That means from implementation class, but you can actually call them within the within the interface. So within the interface means what are the options? You can call them in default method if it is private, and if it is static private, you can call them in either a default or static method. So that's about the new features in interfaces. I hope you have understood, and see you soon in the next session where we discuss about multiple inheritance in Java and how do we achieve that multiple inheritance using interfaces. Thank you.